Okay, children, let us wind up the poems first in one stretch, the 4 poems. Okay, let us get into the first poem that is prescribed for your examination. The tables turned. Actually, you know so much about the writer, the poet Wordsworth. Let us have a look into some small introduction about the poet. William Wordsworth, born in the year 1770 and died in the year 1850, a major English romantic poet, was born in Cumberland, England on April 7, 1770. He started the romantic movement in English literature with the help of Samuel Taylor Coleridge after their joint publication of Lyrical Ballads in 1798. With the publication of Lyrical Ballads, his literary career was started. This collection also contains the poem Tinton Abbey, one of his famous poems. He is best known as nature's poet. He shows his affection and love for nature in his famous poem, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. His other famous works include London 1802, Wood, Intimations of Immortality, Resolution and Independence, The Solitary Reaper, The World is Too Much with Us, and Character of the Happy Warrior. See, the poem The Tables Turned was first published in Lyrical Ballads in 1798. Wordsworth dedicates this poem to his friend and also asks him to leave all his books and come out with him to observe and enjoy nature. According to him, nature is filled with knowledge that would offer him peace. Let us have a glance into the meanings for the difficult words. See, listen to me attentively. Toil, to work very hard for a long time, usually doing hard physical work. Hundreds of men toiled for years to build the pyramid. Uses, meaning and uses. M stands for meaning, U stands for uses. Luster, the shining quality of a surface. Her hair lost its luster as she grew old. Mellow, soft, rich, and pleasant. The leaves look golden in the mellow afternoon light. Strife, angry or violent disagreement between two people or groups of people. The country was torn apart by strife. Linnet, a small brown and gray bird of the finch family. Blithe, showing you do not care or are not anxious about what you are doing. He drove with Blythe, disregarded for the rules of the road and hence met with an accident. Throsil, a small, medium-sized singing bird found in UK. Preacher, a person often a member of the clergy who gives religious talks and often performs religious ceremonies. In a church, a preacher is famous for her inspiring sermons. Impulse, a sudden strong wish or need to do something without stopping to think about the results. Vernal, connected with the season of spring. Swans were racing along in the vernal currents. Says, a very wise person, especially as a result of great experience. Valmiki was a sage. Lore, traditional knowledge and stories about a subject. According to local lore, water has healing properties. Meddling, involvement in something that does not concern you. The government is completely opposed to outside forces meddling in domestic affairs. Barren, waste, not fertile. Plants do not grow in a barren desert or barren land. Say, listen to me attentively while I am reading the poem aloud to you. Try to recite on your own. Try to read it aloud on your own. Up, my friend, and quit your books, or surely you will grow double. Up, my friend, and clear your looks. Why all this toil and trouble? The sun above the mountain's head, a freshening luster mellow, through all the long green fields has spread his first sweet evening yellow. Books, it's a dull and endless strife. Come, hear the woodland linnet, how sweet his music, on my life. There is more of wisdom in it. And hark, how blithe the throstle sings. He too is no mean preacher. Come forth into the light of things. Let nature be your teacher. She has a world of ready wealth, her minds and hearts to bless. Spontaneous wisdom breathed by health, truth breathed by cheerfulness. One impulse from a vernal wood may teach you more of man, of moral evil and of good than all the sages can. Sweet is the lore which nature brings, her meddling intellect misshapes the beauteous forms of things we mother to desert. Enough of the science and art. Close up those barren leaves, come forth and bring with you a head that watches and receives. Let us get into the summary. I am not going to give you the written form of it, but I am going to explain it to you in English. So be attentive. Listen to me carefully. The present poem, The Table Stand, was written by Wordsworth. Actually, I have given you the introduction in the beginning. In this poem, The Table Stand, Wordsworth explains his strong faith in nature and is confident that nature is the best teacher rather than books. He strongly believes that a man can only attain knowledge in the circle of nature. He has turned the tables and asked his friend to leave his dull and unfruitful books to observe nature. He feels that books are a proper source of knowledge and claims that these books will make him double and lose his reality. And Wordsworth asks his friend why he is facing the struggle and trouble when he has an easy way of achieving knowledge from nature. And here Wordsworth feels that nowadays man is very busy with his books and he forgets to go outside and spend some time in nature. The peace and tranquility that nature provides couldn't be found inside the books. Books may provide you with knowledge, but this knowledge is of little or no use. Nature is filled with knowledge and it will give you wisdom which is superior to knowledge. The wisdom that you get from nature will always keep you fit and healthy. According to Wordsworth, spending time in nature will not only provide you with mental peace and health, but will also teach you more about humanity, goodness, and evil as well. On the basis of bookish knowledge, we make differences. The poet gives an example of birds that are creatures who lack bookish knowledge but have knowledge of good and evil from nature. And by the end of this poem, Wordsworth asks his friend to leave aside science and arts and close these books which are of no use. Wordsworth asks his friend to come with an open heart that is willing to receive and observe messages from nature. Wordsworth is an ardent lover of nature and confident that nature is the biggest teacher rather than books. He feels that books are not a proper source of knowledge. He claims that books will make him double, losing his reality. Wordsworth asks his friend to clear his looks, that is, to change his attitude towards observing things. He asks his friend that why he is facing all the struggle and trouble when he has an easy way of achieving knowledge from nature. Nowadays, man is so busy with books that he forgets to go outside and spend some time in nature. The peace and tranquility that nature provides could not be found inside books. Nature is filled with knowledge and it will give you wisdom which is superior to knowledge. And from this poem, two questions will be given to you. First one is, why does Wordsworth consider nature to be a good teacher? Second one, do you prefer to gain knowledge through books or become wise through experience of nature? Give reasons in support of your answer with reference to the poem The Table's Child. And the annotation parts are the first one. Ah, pup, my friend, and clear your looks. Why all this toil and trouble? Second one, books. It's a dull and endless strife. Come, hear the woodland linnet. Third one, she has a world of ready wealth or minds and arts to bless. Fourth, enough of science and arts. Close up those barren leaves. Okay, let us close the poem, The Table's Turn, and now let us turn into the third poem. Actually, it is prescribed as a second poem to you for your examination, The Builders. Here also the writer's name is Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And let us know something about the writer, about the poet. See here, Longfellow Henry Wadsworth, a great American Longfellow, H.W. Longfellow, his name is Longfellow Henry Wadsworth. It is not Wordsworth. a great American poet born on 27th of February 1807 in Portland, Maine. What about the real Wordsworth? Wordsworth is a British poet, whereas Wordsworth, H.W. Wordsworth, is an American poet. He was a commanding figure in the cultural life of 19th century America. He became a national literary figure by the 1850s and a world famous personality by the time of his death in 1882. He was a poet, educator, traveler, a linguist, and a romantic whose poetry was rooted in American life and history. He is said to be the first American poet who didn't try to be just like the British poets. Longfellow embraced the genre of transcendentalism and wrote many lyric poems known for their musicality. His famous poems include Paul Revel's Ride, Song of Hiawatha, and Evangeline. See, let us look into the difficult words from the poem. The meanings for the difficult words. Massive, very large, heavy, and solid. The explosion made a massive hole in the ground. Here again, M stands for meaning and U stands for uses. Yawning, to open your mouth wide and breathe in deeply through it, usually because you are tired or bored. We couldn't help yawning during the speech. Rot, formal or literary, used only in past tense, caused something to happen, especially a change. The Hudud cyclone wrought havoc in the city of Visakhapatnam. Fumble, a problem or temporary failure when you are on the way to achieve something, an act of falling. After a slight stumble backwards, he regained his balance. Ample, enough or more than enough. There was ample time to reach the airport. Turret, a small tower on top of a building, especially a castle. A turret containing a huge bell was added to the castle. See, have a look into the poem. Listen to me attentively while I'm reading it to you and look at the screen. See, the builders. Who do you think are the builders of our life? If we build our own house, how careful should we be? Compare building a house to building a life. Is it interesting? Let us see after reading the poem. The poem to find out. Read the poem to find out. All are architects of fate, working in those walls of time, some with massive deeds and grades, some with ornaments of rhyme. Nothing useless is or low, each thing in its place is best, and what seems but idle shows strengthens and supports the rest. For the structure that we raise, time is with materials filled. Our todays and yesterdays are the blocks with which we build. Truly, shape and fashion this, leave no yawning gaps between. Think not, because no man sees, such things will remain unseen. In the elder days of art, builders wrought with greatest care, each minute and unseen part for the gods see everywhere. Let us do our work as well, both the unseen and the seen. Make the house where gods may dwell, beautiful, entire, and clean. Else our lives are incomplete, standing in these walls of time, broken stairways where the feet stumble as they seek to climb. Build today, then strong and sure, with a firm and ample base, and ascending and secure shall tomorrow find its place. Thus alone can we attain to those turrets where the eye sees the world as one vast plain and one boundless reach of sky. Actually, it is beautifully explained to you in your classroom by me. Now listen to me, the summary which I am going to read out to you. Listen to me attentively so much so that it can be useful to you. Okay? The Builders is a beautiful poem. See here. This poem is a simple metaphor where human life is compared to a building and we, the human beings, are the builders. The poem is about how we make every day, how we create our own future, building them out of every hour we live. The premise as a whole is that each day is a block we lay down to build the characteristics of our life. What blocks we lay down is up to us, because at the end of the day, our life is based on the blocks we choose. We should watch what we do as it affects our later lives. The poet advises on how to make each day mean something, describing each day as a building block. Once you place your block of yesterday, you have to move on and try to make tomorrow's block stronger. You can make the structure the way you want. However, a skyscraper isn't built overnight, nor are we our lives, are our lives. It takes time, hard work, resilience, perseverance, commitment, honesty, and integrity to build a good and strong character. Finally, the poet says in the last stanza that with all the hard work, if we can build a tall building, it is from that higher perspective, from that wiser angle, that we can see what is worth building our lives around. It is from that perspective that we can see the world as one vast plain. We need to build ourselves with such high values that the world and its many differences disappear for us, and then we will be able to reach greater heights to the boundless sky. Here the poet uses anostrophe to say time is with materials filled, to state that building something worthwhile takes time. Time is also mentioned many times to reiterate that it is imperative to make the most of what time we do have. The poem is so musical with 7 syllables in each line. Last word of the first line rhymes with the one in the third line, and the last word of the second line rhymes with the one in the fourth line in each stanza. See here, sure, secure, base, place, complete, feet, time, climb, attain, plain, eye, sky. That is how it is rhymed. Well, dwell, seen, clean. So actually it is really a beautiful poem. And listen to me attentively, it is so understandable even as a poem. We need not get through the synopsis. All are architects of fate, working in these walls of time, some with massive deeds and grades, some with ornaments of rhyme. Nothing useless is or low, each thing in its place is best. In what seems but ideal shows strengthens and supports the rest. For the structure that we raise, time is with materials filled. Our today's and yesterdays are the blocks with which we build. Truly shape and fashion these, leave no yawning gaps between. Think not, because no man sees. Such things will remain unseen. In the elder days of arts, building brought with greatest care, each minute an unseen part for the gods see everywhere. Let us do our work as well, both the unseen and the seen, make the house where gods may dwell, beautiful, entire, and clean. Else our lives are incomplete, standing in these walls of time, broken stairways where the feet stumble as we seek to climb. Build today, then strong and sure, with a firm and ample base, and ascending and secure shall tomorrow find its place. Thus alone can we attain to those turrets where the eye sees the world as one vast plain and one boundless reach of sky. So let us close this poem. Now, let us turn into the poem Any Woman, Catherine Tynan or Catherine Tynan. See, let us have look into the introduction about the poet. The poetess Catherine Tynan was born in the year 1859 and died in 1931. 60, 40, 31, 72 years she lived. Was an Irish-born writer known mainly for her novels and poetry. She was born in an agricultural family in Dublin and educated at a convent school in Drogheda. Her poems were first published in 1878. She had close association with the poet Gerard Manley Hopkins and married him. She went on to play a major part in Dublin literary circles until she married and moved to England. Later, she lived at Claremorris, County Mayo. She wrote more than 100 novels. Her collected poems appeared In 1930, she also wrote 5 autobiographical volumes. Her poem, Any Woman, is a beautiful picture of women and her extraordinary duties in the family. It is an inspiring poem that celebrates the glory of womanhood. Okay, let us get into the difficult words, the meanings for the difficult words. Ruin, to spoil or destroy something completely. Meaning and uses. Her injury ruined her chances of winning the race. Hearth, the area around a fireplace. They were reluctant to leave hearth and home. Thrive, to grow vigorously, flourish. Some plants thrive in sandy soil. Sacred, also scared, frightened or worried. Is scared of snakes. Tether, a rope or chain used to tie, especially an animal, so as to restrict its movements. The horse had been tethered to a post. Deck, a flat area for walking on, built across space between the sides of the boat. We sat on the deck until it was dark. Manger, a long through form which horses or cattle feed. Though it is an old-fashioned poetic or religious word for you, here it refers to God. Let us have a look into the poem. Listen to me carefully while I'm reading it aloud to you. Any woman. It's a short poem with 6 stanzas only. It is about woman. Any woman means every woman. See here. The poem deals with the importance of women in society and in one's own house or home. I am the pillars of the house, the keystone of the arch. Am I? I am the pillars of the house, the keystone of the arch. Am I? Take me away, and roof and wall would fall to ruin me utterly. I am the pillars of the house, the keystone of the arch. Am I? Take me away, and roof and wall would fall to ruin me utterly. I am the fire upon the hearth. I am the light of the good sun. I am the heat that warms the earth, which else were colder than a stone. I am the fire upon the hearth. I am the light of the good sun. I am the heat that warms the earth, which else were colder than a stone. At me, the children warm their hands. I am the light of love alive. Without me, cold the hearthstone stands, nor could the precious children thrive. At me, the children warm their hands. I am the light of love alive. Without me, cold the hearthstone stands, nor could the precious children thrive. I am the twist that holds together the children in its sacred ring, the knot of love from whose close tether no lost child goes a wandering. I am the twist that holds together the children in its sacred ring, the knot of love from whose close tether no lost child goes a wandering. I am wandering. I am the house from floor to roof. I deck the walls, the board I spread. I spin the curtains, warp and woof, and shake the down to their bed, to be their bed. I am the house from floor to roof. I deck the walls, the board I spread. I spin the curtains, warp and woof, and shake the down to be their bed. I am their wall against all danger, their door against wind and snow. Thou whom a woman laid in a manger, take me not till the children grow. I am their wall against all danger, their door against the wind and snow. Thou whom a woman laid in a manger, take me not till the children grow. See, it's a prayer to God. She is pleading with God that She shouldn't be taken in between her days. Okay. Now let us have a look into the summary. Actually, we have dealt it with in our classrooms. Let us have a sum up of the poem. See, listen to me attentively while I am summing up the poem, while I am giving you the meaning for the poem. Any Woman by Catherine Tynan. The poem presents the extraordinary power of a woman to hold a family together. The poetess describes the bond between the mother and her children. She feels that motherhood is the supreme gift to women. Mother renders selfless service and sacrifices everything for the sake of her children and the family. In the poem, the poetess explains about the cares, worries, and burdens that mothers bear everywhere to hold their homes in order. The speaker of the poem is a woman, and she is the mother of a house. The poetess describes her role in maintaining the family. She is an important and responsible person to look after the family and guide the children. She says that she is the pillar of the house and the keystone of the arch. If the pillars and keystone are taken away, the house will be spoiled and the roof will collapse. In the same way, if the mother is taken away, the family will be spoiled. A mother is not only an important person of the house, but also she is the life, light, and love that fills a house. Like the sun which warms the earth, mother is the fire upon the earth, and children feel happy in the hands of a mother. Without her, the house would be lifeless and the children would not develop well. The mother is also like a twist or a bond in the ring that holds the different strands together. She keeps the children together in the holy ring of love. Without the bond of mother's love, many children will be spoiled. The poetess describes the functions that a mother performs every day in the house. She works to make her children happy. She decorates the house, gets the table ready for dinner, arranges the curtains, and makes their bed. Here she is also compared to a mother bird that builds the nest, feeds the baby birds, makes their bed with their own soft feathers. She protects the children from the wind and the snow and from all the risks by standing edge of wall. Finally, Mom, she prays to God to keep her alive till the children grow and lead their lives happily. See, it's a beautiful poem. Let us close it and turn to the other poem. See, challenge to pet. You know many things about Sarojini Naidu. Let us have a look into the introduction about the poetess. Sarojini Chattopadhyaya, the Nightingale of India, was born on February 13, 1879 in Hyderabad. Her father, Raghunath Chattopadhyaya, was a scientist and the founder of the Nizam College in Hyderabad, and her mother, Varada Sundari Devi, was a famous Bengali poetess. The sobriquet Nightingale of India was bestowed on her because of her poems, which are lyrical and rich in imagery. They have a simple but timeless beauty with various types of meter and rhyme schemes. Her poems are appreciated by poetry lovers and studied by students across the world. She was a child prodigy, freedom fighter, and woman leader. A skilled orator and an exemplary administrator, she had the credit of starting the Indian Renaissance movement with her writings. Sarojini Naidu was proficient in Bengali, Urdu, Telugu, English, and Persian. She was a gifted student who topped the matriculation examination at Madras University. Her scientist father wanted her to become a mathematician or scientist, but she had an innate interest in poetry, which was displayed at a very tender age. Her poems were delicate, without flowery language, and stuck to simple words and everyday Indian milieu of forests and mountains. Weavers and snake charmers, palanquin bearers to explore themes like love, separation, death, heartbreak, and mystery of life. Here, let us have a look into the difficult words and its meanings. Glossary. Futile, pointless, having no purpose because there is no chance of success, meaning and uses. The doctor's effort to revive him were futile. Poignant, incisive, penetrating, having a strong effect on your feelings, especially in a way that makes you feel sad. It was a poignant, the effects of a war that touched every aspect of society. Subtle, not very noticeable or obvious. There are subtle differences between the two versions. Malice, a feeling of hatred for somebody that causes a desire to harm them. The ghosts are described as if they bear actual malice towards humans. Usurp, to take somebody's position in or power without having the right to do this. This decision will usurp the powers of the committee, scatheless, harmless. He felt like a man who had just come scatheless through the horrible crisis and once more knows the sweet sensation of safety. Pageant, an elaborate public display. Once the pageant was over, all the participants took their dresses back home. Smite, to hit somebody or something hard. He vowed that he would smite his enemy. Mellifluous, sounding sweet and smooth, very pleasant to listen to. She sounded quite mellifluous on the phone. 12. To stop something such as violent behavior or protest, extra police were called in to quell the disturbances. Anguish, severe pain, mental suffering, or unhappiness. Tears of anguish filled her eyes. Pinion, to hold or tie somebody, especially by their arms. His arms were pinioned to his sides. Betray, to give information about somebody, something to an enemy. He was offended money to betray his company. He was offered money to betray his company. Hanker, to have a strong desire for something. He had hankered after fame all his life. Slake, to lessen the force of. The electrolyte water should help slake the runner's thirst during marathon. See, listen to the poem. Time is very limited. Listen to me attentively. Why will you vex me with your futile conflict? Why will you strive with me, O foolish fate? You cannot break me with your poignant envy. You cannot slay me with your subtle hate. For all the cruel folly you pursue, I will not cry with suppliant hands to you. You may perchance wreck in your bitter malice the radiant empire of mine eager eyes. Say, can you rob my memories, rear dominion or sunlit mountains and sidereal skies? In the enduring treasuries, I hold their ageless splendor of unravished gold. You may usurp the kingdoms of my hearing. Say, shall my scatheless spirit cease to hear the bridal rapture of the blowing valleys, the lyric pageant of the passing year, the sounding odes and singing harmonies of battling tempests and unconquered seas? Yeah, you may smite my mouth to throbbing silence, pluck from my lips the power of articulate words. Say, shall my heart lack its familiar language while earth has nests for her mellifluous birds? Shall my impatient heart forget to sing with the 10,000 voices of the spring? Yeah, you may quell my blood with sudden anguish, fetter my limbs with some compelling pain. How will you daunt my free, far-journeying fancy that rides upon the pinions of the rain? How will you tether my triumphant mind, rivals and fearless comrades of the wind? Though you deny the hope of all my being, betray my love, my sweetest dream destroy, yet will I slake my individual sorrow and the deep source of universal joy? Oh, fate, in vain you hanker to control my frail, serene, indomitable soul. Let us have a look into the summary. Listen to me attentively while I am explaining the poem to you in English. Okay, listen to me attentively. A Challenge to Fate by Sarojini Naidu is a beautiful, inspiring poem which is depicting the strong spirit of human soul. She shows how an enlightened human spirit cannot be defeated by fate. Fate, sometimes referred to as destiny, is a predetermined course of events which are out of the control of a person. It is thought of as something inevitable, and usually people are afraid of it. But the poet not only refuses to acknowledge any such fear, but daringly calls it foolish and asks why it is always conspiring and annoying her by preventing her from enjoying life. She challenges and warns fate that its hateful schemes against her happiness would go futile. The poet rebels against fate by saying that it may possibly be victorious in destroying her bright, colorful world of light that her eyes see. It may take away from her the ability to hear the melodious sounds of life. It may cut down her power to speak effectively and terrorize her by withholding her fearless spirit from moving freely. Still, the poetess won't submit herself to fate. Fate can't strip her of the exquisite memories and delightful sounds of life. She can relish them passionately within her heart. Her emotional heart still sings songs of hope. She says confidently that fate can't bind her unconquerable and fearless mind. Finally, she articulates that whatever fate may do to scare her to death, she will continue to drink the ambrosia of hope from universal joyousness. She makes it clear to fate that its desire to puppeteer the indomitable spirit of the poet will remain unsuccessful. Very beautiful poem. And the questions they ask from this poem is the first one: why are people generally afraid of fate? How did Sarojini Naidu challenge such a fearful fate? Second, what is the theme of the poem, A Challenge to Fate? What is the life lesson we can learn from the poem? And the annotation bits: one, for all the cruel folly you pursue, I will not cry with suppliant hands to you. Second, yeah, you may smite my mouth to throbbing silence. Pluck from my lips power of articulate words. How will you daunt my pre-forgening fancy that rides upon the pinions of rain? Third one. Fourth one. Yet will I slake my individual sorrow at the deep source of universal joy. See here, two questions and four annotations. From each and every poem, there are two questions and four annotation parts. So you are supposed to learn only one answer for each and every poem, for each poem, and you are supposed to reproduce it in your examination. As I have given you the PDF form of notes for you, you please get through the answers and read them and try to get them by heart and produce them in your examination. Let us close this session. Actually, Era Prasanna, Poleswarrao, and two other persons have joined. Let us close this session, and I'm going to give you some more videos from YouTube link. I'm going to record this session to you and I'm going to post it to you in your WhatsApp. Thank you all for who have attended this session. Let us close it and now come to WhatsApp. Okay.